Circadian disruption as well has such a big impact in immune signaling within the gut.
For me personally, I feel, for example, when I work out, that contributes to me managing my cortisol and managing my stress. This is like some of my happy place.
And you can't have these amazing longevity markers and all of this without really working on it.
We find it so difficult to really slow down and do these sort of things. We find them almost a waste of time. Welcome back to Becoming Limitless. With longevity becoming one of the fastest growing sort of areas of health for us, and with so much information, testing, supplementation, technology available today, what actually matters? Today I have Dr. Rhea Kotecha to separate science from noise and to discuss just an open, authentic discussion about what we think about the area and what we're doing next. Welcome. I'm so looking forward for this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today.
Such a pleasure. So tell me how you got here, like how, not to the studio, but how you got to doing what you're doing.
To doing longevity medicine.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So I practice in traditional medicine, and my first years were in acute COVID medicine in the UK. So I was working in this hospital, Lewisham Hospital, which was one of the worst hit for the first and the second wave.
Wow.
And it was very overwhelming as a junior doctor. And in general, looking at acute care, I wasn't very happy about what was happening. People would come in and you just analyze them and say, who do you need? Do you need cardiology referral? Do you need respiratory input? What's going on? And the question of acute medicine is, what's wrong with you? They don't ask, why have you gotten here? Or what is your story behind that?
Right.
Then we move on to general practice, where the question is, what's your diagnosis? How far have you crossed the threshold? What is your blood pressure reading? Is it above 130? Then we go on a medication. But they never ask, what is your story?
Right.
And now I feel like longevity medicine, it gives you the time to really ask what's happening to the person. So I like to call it medicine before the drift, before the symptoms, before all of this. And I know something you like to say quite often is health isn't built in the clinic, and it's built at home.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to be able to look at a person before all these things go wrong. And what can we do to make this better? What can we do to change the trajectory of disease and really cultivate health from an early stage?
Amazing. I mean, we have so much in common when it comes to these things. So it's amazing. And I find, I don't know about you, but I find that the complete shift in our minds has not happened yet. So even when we're dealing, I don't know about you, but with me, when I'm dealing with someone and helping them with their lifestyle, for example, whatever I say that perhaps can work for them, the reaction is always like, how long would it take? So the same logic that we used to use with medication, with traditional medicine, has not gone away. So people are looking for always the quickest possible end result, right? Do you see that also?
I see that so often. And, you just really hit the nail on the head, that people are expecting that same change because you expect a medication to take X amount of time. I can't tell you how many women come to me currently, and in the last month, it must have been 10 that have come with really bad gut issues. They've had these gut issues for 10, 15 years. So I tell them, they've come to me recently because they're about to go on their summer travels. They want to lose this weight and fix this bloating. I said, but it's a 6-month process. I mean, we still need to do the microbiome testing. It'll take a month for that to come back. And you'll start to see real changes after 6 months. And they look at me horrified. And they said, but I've come to you for a quick fix. Why won't you? I've got a birthday party in London in 2 weeks and I'm traveling for that. I need to be ready for that. And I'm saying, but you've come to me with a decade problem. How can I fix it in a week or two? Of course, a week or two already makes differences, like the way you eat, the way you live your lifestyle. You start to see those microbiome changes within 2-3 meals. But to really have that healing, it takes longer.
Yeah.
And the impatience, unfortunately, is there so much. And I think it's actually being precipitated by the AI world. Because nowadays we have ChatGPT and Claude. And you ask a question, you get an answer instantly. Whether it's the right answer, doesn't really matter, but you have that answer. So
Yeah.
it's instantaneous, and people are expecting these instant results as well. Which
Yeah, and when issues are happening and the body is incredible at keeping it away from you, like you get little signs like brain fog or bloating, or you wake up with a slight headache or whatever. Like, it gives you little signs, but it's super capable of keeping that information to itself, right? So you're not really focused on it. You're not paying attention to what's happening. So it could take years for something to take place, but once you feel it and you want to do something about it, your attention is on it. It seems like, the time is not moving fast enough. So to making that connection and helping people to understand that when you're making a lifestyle changes for overall well-being, for health span, for adding years of health for your last decade, it's not something that you could do like we do with the medication. You're not fixing a symptom, you're fixing a system. And that's a huge thing to do, and it requires small, it's what happens in between. I always say, it's not the big decisions. It's not taking one particular thing that will make the biggest difference. It's all the small things that you do throughout your day and night, and that makes the biggest difference, that accumulate. And most likely that's how we get to a situation where our body isn't where it needs to be, or is not in the best shape, because of all these small little decisions that we make throughout the days, weeks, months, years sometimes. And the same is happening with me. Like, the perhaps the biggest problem, I don't think I have seen anyone that has come to me for any sort of advice that don't have gut issues. Why do you think that is?
I think the way that we're living our life at the moment, the chronic stress, firstly, that erodes the gut lining. It erodes that mucus layer that's so protective. Circadian disruption as well has such a big impact in immune signaling within the gut. So many of us will wake up at 6 a.m. Monday to Friday, and then in the weekend sleep till 12. Right. And that social jet lag impacts it. Then the quality of food is the biggest thing. I think ultra-processed foods have now become foundational. They're not occasional. A lot of people will come to me saying, but I'm eating so healthy. I said, but what are you eating? I have an oat milk latte. I don't have dairy. But what's in that oat milk latte? It's sugar-free, but what are the emulsifiers inside it? I'm having a coconut milk latte. Have you checked that coconut milk? Because some of them are only emulsifiers and gums, and there's actually no coconut in it at all.
Absolutely.
And it's a shame, because marketing is doing this, right? It's big food that's come in, that any single package you see that advertises it's healthy. I always say marketing's on the front and biology's on the back, but how many people turn it around and actually read the ingredients?
Yeah.
I'm learning so much now. When I first started practicing medicine, I used to eat really poorly. I had issues with my health, and I've learned through that. So you can't expect people to know this, right? We don't have that education in school systems. We don't have that education in life in general. So it's very difficult for somebody to be like, oh, I'm going to pick out what's ultra-processed and be able to eat a better quality diet. But unfortunately, especially even living in the Middle East, living in the GCC, so much is made abroad and brought in, right? So the quality of nutrients degrades. And I mean, it's amazing that there's so many farms and different things that are popping up here, but it's a challenge with the climate, right? We have to be honest about that. So the bulk and the majority is still being shipped in. And for example, something as simple as vitamin C. Like, for example, if you pick an apple, if the vitamin content of that day was 10, it degrades almost by 50% every day. So day 2 is 5, day 3 is 2.5, day 4 is 1.25, and vitamin C is like our master antioxidant, right? Mm-hmm. So there's so much stuff that's being degraded before we're eating it, and there's just such little emphasis on whole foods. It's take this supplement to fix this, take this IV drip, this whole marketing about, you need to spend more on all of this, rather than really looking at what do I do to restore the terrain of my gut.
Right, yeah. And you said something at the beginning that I always say to people, because we know that there's a direct connection between our nervous system and our gut, right? That's why we say my gut feeling is this. This makes me feel sick to my gut. Like there's a direct connection between our emotions and what happens to us and our gut. But most people find it difficult to understand what is the relationship. How could stress affect my gut and make me bloat, or make me, constipated or whatever. How do you explain that to them? What would you say to them? This is like, for me, I really need to learn that from you.
So from the first thing, when I try and make that connection, a lot of people say, I don't really see it. How can it be really affecting? I always ask them, that nervous poop, you're really stressed about something and then your gut feels uncomfortable and you have that nervous poo. A lot of people have that. That's connecting, there's butterflies you feel in the stomach, that anxiety you feel in the stomach. It connects the way everything is behaving. So you really do feel it. From a biological point of view, what can happen with excess cortisol is we have our gut lining, which is your epithelium. Then you have this mucus layer, which has a lot of immune signaling. This is really helpful. And then on top of that lies our microbiome. The microbiome shouldn't touch the epithelium because then it causes inflammation.
Right.
And then it causes intestinal permeability, leaky gut.
That's the leaky gut thing, yeah.
And then everything starts to go inside and chronic inflammation ensues.
Of course.
What happens a lot with stress is it reduces that mucus layer. So then now these bugs, which are really beneficial, can start sitting on that layer and then eroding it and then start causing these symptoms of leaky gut. And that's what I see so often with autoimmunity. And most people who have autoimmunity have a stress type A personality or some form of major stress in their life. Interesting, especially I work with a lot of ladies that have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And the number one cause of this thyroiditis is actually a relationship breakdown. Secondly, followed by moving house. So like a very stressful situation can have an acute effect on the gut. And this permeability just starts this cascade of inflammation. And unfortunately, I've actually seen in the last couple of months, so many of my patients that we were on these long-term programs, they were doing really well. Come March, when everything happened, they just came back and they said, Dr. Rhea, everything has come back. We've not progressed. I'm so frustrated. I did so well, but I'm feeling all the symptoms again. But the stress from the environment that a lot of people are not used to being in such a tense geopolitical situation. We were all very stressed about it. Different people handled it very differently. And some people, it really went to their gut and these symptoms got a lot worse. So you do see that correlation between the two.
So if we're talking with the logic of longevity, right? Shouldn't we be sort of focusing a little bit more on the nervous system and less on the gut, so to kind of look at the cause rather than the symptom? Because what's happening in the gut is a symptom of what we just talked about. So we seem to also, like, sometimes I make that mistake myself, is that like someone is having these issues and I know one of the sources is perhaps stress. I see it in myself, I see it in a lot of people around me. But we end up starting with the gut instead of kind of looking at that, because I think dealing with the nervous system, it's hard, right? Like if I have that, if I'm sitting in front of you as a client and that my stress is causing issues in my gut and maybe overall health, right? Let's face it, skin issues, brain issues, stress is such a because it's such a powerful sort of biological activity, I want to say, because the body goes into protective mode, right? And I think one of the reasons why the gut gets involved first, because that's where the source of energy, the source of everything that is coming into the body. So the body kind of does something in that area. I don't quite understand the relationship, and obviously you put it in so beautifully. So what would be an advice for me if my stress levels are causing some of these issues around my body, be it skin, be it an autoimmune disease, be it a leaky gut? What would be the natural? I mean, obviously we know, like breathing, sleeping better, staying away, finding ways to do. Is there anything else that you can talk about when it comes to this?
I think it's such a valid point, and it's such a poignant point that most people don't tend to discuss. When we're talking about gut health and working on it in functional medicine, it's the 5R framework, which the first is remove, then you reinoculate, you do all of this, but the last is rebalance. And rebalancing that system is stress regulation. And that's often a step that's missed. So people will feel better and they'll come back to the same symptoms if they don't fix that stress. Yeah. So your question about should we be working on the nervous system first? I do believe that, although I do feel that there is a lot to do with quality of food and also having a nutrition background. I really do emphasize on this. But in terms of just talking about that nervous system and we have our fight or flight, and then we have our rest and digest. And people forget, we think about rest, but we forget digest is part of that parasympathetic nervous system.
So true.
So things like relaxing to be able to release the salivary enzymes to start breaking down your starch, then releasing the right amount of stomach acid to start protein digestion. That's so essential to be absorbing iron. We have so many issues with ferritin at the moment, which lead to,
especially with women,
with the women, with a lot of hair loss, all of this. And people think my ferritin's low just because of my periods, but what is the system? How's it being absorbed? Is that stomach acid good enough? Like, that's the first step of digestion before we go on to into the intestines. If that stomach acid is also not killing off the bacteria and parasites, we have like parasites come up. So a lot of people start to get worried about eating sushi and things like that. But basic tips is honestly just mindful eating. Before you start your meal, like trying to not eat on the go, which is something I need to work on too. I even ate my lunch in the car on the way here, rushed, because we all live a very busy lifestyle. But whenever you can, trying to take that time, take a few deep breaths before, relax the system by a little bit of warm water, some apple cider vinegar. That's quite helpful for just starting digestion. A couple of deep breaths, and intentionally just thinking, I'm grateful for this food. I'm grateful for the company I'm sharing with. Think about how our ancestors used to eat. Like, feasting was something so special with the family, and just trying not to rush, trying not to have your laptop doing emails or whatever.
Same time, yeah.
But just being mindful, chewing that food, appreciating that flavor. People often eat so quickly, but the joy in food is your taste buds, and that has to be in your mouth. You swallow it quickly, you're not going to get that benefit. You're just going to get all the extra calories.
Especially foodies would agree with you for sure. I'm not a foodie myself.
Really?
But especially foodies, they would so agree with you. Like, it's so important for the experience of food rather than just food, This is so valuable. The thing is, though, we find it so difficult to really slow down and do these sort of things. We find them almost a waste of time. And they accumulate and they become something else. So that's the area perhaps that I struggle the most in with people when it comes to, because when we're talking about any situation in the body, even though, that we understand what's possibly happening at the moment, and yes, it is stress, but you could deal with stress with some of the stuff that you've done. But I also feel that there are other things that we do that can contribute to managing that part that could be fun for us. So I feel it, for me personally, I feel, for example, when I work out, that contributes to me managing my cortisol and managing my stress. This is like some of my happy sort of place that I could be in. There are certain things like I do a short walk every morning, like really quiet, just before I see the moon. I'm just walking. That helps me to regulate a little bit. So it doesn't always have to be, I think, especially for me, at least, even though I do the breathing as often as I can, and I'm fairly self-regulated, but it does not have to be something where I can't be bothered with that. Find the things that you naturally have affinity for, and then make those contribute to a better regulated nervous system. So that works for me, and I don't know if it works for everyone, but that's usually the advice that I kind of give people when it comes to this. But it's still not easy. Like, if we're being honest, like it's
challenging. What I like to do is ask people, what did you do in high school for fun? Did you used to sing? Did you play an instrument? Did you used to paint? A lot of people say, I used to play tennis, or I used to do this or that. And it was so long ago, or, I used to draw. I said, just go back to drawing, give yourself 20 minutes a week. And they're like, I don't have the time, I'm so out of it. I said, just give it a go. It's a hobby that you used to love. And as kids, we're so fun and experimental, and, we really learn to enjoy life. And then as we become adults, life becomes so busy, and it's all about what's needed to be done rather than what you enjoy doing.
And we shift our priorities. So then, it becomes something where all of a sudden, things that you will not, I guarantee you, think about when you're on your deathbed, they are your number one thing that you do every day, and the things that you will think about when you're on your deathbed, they are way down the list, So we have these messed up a little bit. So it's so interesting, the lifestyles that we lead at the moment, for a lot of us. And I think it takes a lot of, like a little bit of, a lot or a little, I'm not sure, but for some people a lot, some people a little discipline in order for you to kind of begin to understand that, first of all, you're not in complete control of the things that are happening around you. And in some individuals, what I see is that there are sources of stress that you can't get rid of. You know, let's say it could be your husband, you know, it could be, I don't know, your mother-in-law, father, something, you know, you can't really get rid of. And so you have to find a different way to deal with this. So what do you think about the idea of, so this is, again, one of the things that I say, and it works for me. So please let me know what you think of it. So I say to people is that you could control your environment to a certain point. You know, you'll be, as you said, more mindful of the food, more mindful of the label on the back. And that's so interesting, by the way, what you said with this is that the front looks so it's sort of enticing, and the language is so easy to read, and it's right on point, organic, natural, all of these beautiful words, right? And you turn it to the other way around, and these words are like 17 letters, each of them, and like, you know, the most difficult for you to understand. That's not random. That's on purpose.
Yes.
Imagine if it was the other way around. Like, oh my God. So controlling your environment is possible perhaps to a point before it turns into anxiety, which then it creates a vicious loop, you know, because if I obsess about everything that I put in my mouth, how much of it is actually being beneficial to me? So I'm replacing maybe something terrible that I'm putting in my mouth with anxiety, which is affecting me in a different way, but the end result is the same, you know? So I say control without it becoming an anxiety, but the next bit is where I think you excel in is what's happening on the inside. Make your body resilient enough for it to handle these things, right? And perhaps you've seen this in my content too, is that I think the number one longevity organ is muscle, like movement, you know? How much do you involve movement as a natural healing sort of activity?
I think it's so important, and unfortunately in the environment we live in Dubai, we sit in these ergonomic chairs all day, we're in a car all day, but when you look at the blue zones, in Okinawa, they kneel and they squat to like tend to the fire the first thing in the morning. When they're farming in Ikaria, they're always continuously walking, and it's not these big bouts of movement. So I see so many people will come in, and I do hit 3 times a week, but it's not enough. But you know, sitting is the new, and being sedentary is the new smoking, right? And a lot of people say, I'm just too busy. And busy is your euphemism for being sedentary. The body doesn't know that. The body needs that continuous movement. You know, these small bouts here and there, what I like to call zone 1.5, where you're, you know, walking uphill, you're gardening, all of these things that what our ancestors used to live. And now life has become so easy. We can, you know, you order food straight to your door. You don't have to go out to get it. You can get your petrol delivered with Carrefour, and you don't even have to step outside. The convenience that modern life has created has taken out so much of the movement that we need. And, you know, so many people will be like, you know, I'm taking these longevity supplements. Why isn't it working? But how are you building your muscle? Muscles respond to stimulus. If you're not pushing them from a point of view of resistance training, you're not carrying something, you're not using your weights or your body weight, whatever is appropriate for that person, how are you telling that muscle as a stimulant, come on, let's go? It's going to start to go. It's the same with bones as well. Osteoporosis happens slowly, silently. We have reduced bone density, but you're so busy in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, and you're working on your career. But the bones don't know that, right? The bones need that stimulus, mechanical stimulus to be like, come on, osteoblast, let's go. Let's start building this bone. And if it's not there, there's no stimulus to keep it, right? So it's so important. And I always like to ask people, you know, what exercise are you doing? And a lot of them, they say, I'm not doing anything. It's just too overwhelming. So I said, instead of going to your PT and doing these hectic 1-hour sessions, start with 10 minutes. You know, things like doing wall squats, you know, you're at least activating, you know, some glutes, you're activating your quads, like some big muscles. Let's start with very small things, and then let's build it up. But it is so essential, and you can't have these amazing longevity markers and all of this without really working on it. And you have to be super mindful. Little things like, I wish we could redesign. I wish my desk had a walking pad on it.
Yeah.
You know, I wish we'd have like taxis, and hopefully this will be in the future where there's walking pads on a plane. You're so stationary for such a long period of time. That increases the risk of, you know, clots, and, you know, you get dehydrated, your gut gets all funny. So many people get constipated because they've not moved, they've not moved their bowels. So I think it's unfortunately such an issue with the environment we're living in. But what little things can you do? Is it after every 2 hours, do 5 squats, you know, just a little bit, but trying to be a little bit more mindful without going over the top. You know, you don't need those like 3 intense HIIT sessions and sitting the rest of the week. It's not enough. The balance isn't great.
Or at least be intentional about them, you know, instead of, you know, so the normal answer to the question is that I go to the gym 3 times. What does that mean? Like, this is a destination. It's not an actual plan for what you're doing. You know, being at the gym, you could be chatting to friends the whole time. Like, what do you actually do at the gym? And when you think of the body, and like, if you just look at the body, you've never seen a body before, right? Imagine you're an alien, just arrived, landed on Earth, and you saw a body and you think, what does this do? As you see it moving, you know immediately that this body is made to pick, push, squat, stand, lie down, like all of these different things, right? Pull and so on. So if your exercise doesn't do what the body was designed, has evolved to do, you're not exercising. If you're lying on a bench and pushing one way, that's not really what the body was made to do, you know? So it would be designed very differently if that was the case, you know? So obviously all of it contributes because you're still activating the muscles. And then what I love most about muscles is that they're so capable and they're so contributing for the body, right? You said, you know, for bones, also brain, right?
Yes.
These myokines that they release, like literally every time you flex a muscle, like you contract it, you're releasing those beautiful signals that are, you know, letting the bone know that, no, we need you, stay, for the brain to be a little bit happier. It being this awesome, like sugar sink, like pulling, if you're dealing with metabolic stuff, like this is the way for me, you know, instead of being on medication, instead of doing, you know, all sorts of other things, right? So, but it requires effort though, you know, and again, we go back to the same area of like priorities, right? The one area I want to touch on with you also, out of personal interest, and, you know, consider, you know, I come to you and it seems that I have thyroid issues, right? What advice where would you start with someone with hyperthyroidism or something that is related to their thyroid? Because usually there's a connection, right, between autoimmune and like all of they're all kind of connected. Give me some advice on it.
I'd actually start with emotional health, because I see that a lot of the autoimmunity happens from stress and happens from people who are not so happy in what's going on. So let's understand your life, what's happened in that situation, and what can we do to make these changes. For example, with thyroid dysfunction, it is a lot of gut work, and working on that is really important. But how much are you able to take on? Can you do a full autoimmune protocol, which is removing gluten, sugar, soy, all of this for a period of time? Is this too overwhelming? And do we need to start slow and things of just like starting to add more fiber, aiming for 30 plants a week, slow improvements, like, you know, training that gut as a muscle. Like, you can't just go to the gym when you've not ever been to the gym and lift 100 kilos, right? You have to do small things. And I hate restriction. I like more inclusion. And the biggest thing is we're not eating enough plants. We're not eating enough for our microbiome. So little small things like that. But understanding what's happening with that person rather than just looking at their markers, because it's quite fascinating, especially with thyroid autoimmunity. I'll see some people who have like, the cutoffs is like the 15, 20, above that your autoimmune markers are high. So I'll see some people with like autoimmune markers in the 30s, but have horrible symptoms. My joints are aching. I'm so depressed. I'm so tired. I can't play with my kids. I haven't even picked them up from school. I just go to sleep when they leave. I'm feeling horrible. Then I'll see people who will be in the 900s and will randomly pick it up with my screening. And I'll ask them, how are you doing? And they're, oh, I'm fine. So you see that the symptoms are important, and understanding that body is really important. Not just treating those labs, I think, is really, really an important step. So, understanding what's going on in your life that's contributing to everything, and what can we do to really improve your quality of life.
So, I mean, for all those that are listening or watching, if I feel some of those symptoms, how can I examine, like, is it where my emotional state is? What sort of questions would you ask yourself to kind of find out if your environment, your emotional state is under stress, and therefore it could be leading to these biological reactions? Because again, all of this is kind of little vague, right? Because no two people are the same. So most of us don't even realize where the source of our emotional stress is coming from, or maybe subconsciously we do, but consciously we don't. So is there a way, do you think, in your opinion, like, how do you manage where your stress is coming from? What do you ask yourself? Something along those lines?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, check in and just ask. You can be so busy and you forget about all this. And I personally do deal with stress and need to work on that mostly with myself. Trying to work so hard, be a mother, all of this, it does become a lot. And then you're driving with your career, and then you stop to forget and think about what's happening with you. I always notice that when my stress starts getting worse, it starts happening when I'm trying to fall asleep. These lists start going on in my mind. I haven't emailed this patient. I haven't done that. I didn't do the insurance. And then I'm struggling to sleep. And that's the first sort of sign that things are getting a little bit out of whack and I need to take a bit of a break.
And there's nothing you can do about it at the moment, by the way. Like, it's not like in bed you can do some of these things, like, but your mind is telling you, not now. You have to think about them now.
You have to think about them now. Yeah. So I found like journaling is quite helpful. Like, keeping that notepad beside your bed just to jot down things and be like, I'll deal with them tomorrow in the morning. But then I read a really interesting article on what is happiness and how is it defined by 3 different pillars. One being enjoyment, one being satisfaction, and one being pleasure. And I think it's important to see in your life, are you getting all 3? Because a lot of people, like, satisfaction is something you have to really work for. Are you feeling satisfied in the quality of the work you're doing? Do you feel like you're contributing to the community? What are you doing to give back? But then enjoyment's also good. Like, is it eating that ice cream that you love, or is it spending time, watching a movie, going out with friends? That's a little bit lighter. And like, where's your real pleasure coming from? What really makes you feel happy? And everything is segmented into different things. Like with dopamine, it's like the chasing hormone. You'll feel it, and then once that satisfaction comes, you've got that position of a promotion, you've gotten the award that you wanted to get, but then you have this drop in dopamine, so people can often feel a little bit like on shaky ground because dopamine is the chasing, it's not actually that happiness hormone. So it's understanding, like, what are the pillars in my life and how do they contribute to all of these 3 things, and what do I do to sort of tweak them. If there's moments of when you're more stressed and things are overwhelming you, what is the thing that grounds you? What makes you happy? Whether it's going back to old habits, whether it's spending time with your partner, whether it's, just spending time on your own and meditating. What is it for you? But it's important that you have that check-in and ask yourself, am I happy today? If I'm not, what's happening? Am I feeling like I'm not satisfied with one thing? Why is that the case? And can we break it down and understand the pattern of what's happening here? Has this happened previously? And what did I do previously to feel better? What did I do previously that made it worse? I think introspection is so important, and it's something that a lot of us lack.
Introspection, I love it. Yeah, absolutely. There's like a equation for happiness where it says life minus expectations equal happiness. Which includes everything that you've just said. So I quite like that. And then the other thing that I want to add to what you said, something that I practice myself, is that obviously with me being so old chronologically, I learned to not seek happiness outside of me because you cannot get happiness from other people. You can't find it there. It's inside. So if you go inside, the introspection that you say, if you're able to, for your needs to have them inside of you, it's I think a much healthier place to be, because seeking it outside is never, I think, the solution. At least this is something that I've learned. I want to move on really quickly, but it won't take long, I promise, when it comes to supplements. I just want to touch on them a little bit because it still doesn't matter. It's been for decades, everyone so much. I think there isn't anything that we talked about, that hasn't been talked about when it comes to supplements. People still have questions,
Yes.
right? What is your general opinion for supplements? 1, 2, which supplements I should be taking?
So I think it's such a specific question, and I think with every supplement we need to do something called matchmaking. What is the intervention, which is your supplement, and or what is your investigation? So when somebody says, what can I do to just boost myself? What are you wanting to boost? Ask me what the specific thing is. We look at your energy, look at all your other biomarkers, and then we identify like which areas need to be really focused on. Then through that, you add the supplement and then you test again. So many supplements are so unregulated in their manufacturing. There was a recent study in Singapore done at the university that looked at a lot of different brands of NMN, and it showed that 30% didn't even have any NMN on it, and 70% didn't have the labeled quantities. Only 30% actually had the amount it had.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a guessing game, even as a medic prescribing them often, which I do, and I do feel that they're beneficial. We need to ask the question, why? Why are we giving it? What are we looking for? And when are we going to stop? Or if we're not going to stop, what is the benefit? What is the evidence behind it? What is the research? I've had people come to me when they're taking 20, 30 supplements and their liver markers are all deranged. And they're like, but, this is for longevity. I need this, I need that. But like input doesn't always equal output. You can't just put so much in and not think about interactions and think about how it's damaging the gut and think about what strain it's doing on the liver. What can you do that's actually effective? And then to answer the question of what supplements everybody should be taking, it has to be so personalized. But my favorite ones, of course, because of the evidence, is omega-3s, fantastic, magnesium, really helpful, and creatine. I'd say those 3 are my general favorites, and I feel like it's helpful for everybody. But with everything else, we have to be specific. We need to know what we're looking for. And you can spend so much on a supplement, but then if you're not feeling better or not feeling any different and your biomarkers haven't changed, why are you still taking it? Because there's negative effects to taking all these powders, these coated tablets. They damage the gut as well.
Yeah, micronutrient noise, and all sorts of things, absolutely. And then also, that's only part of the picture, right? Because let's say your sleep is poor or you don't move enough.
Yes.
Some of these things are not going to be the answer.
They're not going to do anything.
So it's all of the whole picture coming together. This is such an awesome answer. Thank you. And I think I always say that most of us are over supplementing. It's just simple as that, and we don't really know what we're putting in our bodies. And the same applies to peptides, and the same applies to all sorts of other things too. We just don't know. And we do it because we think that it might be good for us. So where the decision is coming from, it's coming from a good place, but it's not. We don't spend enough investigation on it in order for us to see. But let's say I'm investing in stocks, or I'm opening a bank account, or I'm buying a car. I would research completely
100%.
But when it's stuff going into your body, it seems to disappear, and the body will deal with it, so in general, when people ask me about which supplements I take, I hardly take anything, and very rarely that I do, and if I do, is period of time of my life or part of a year where I know that part of the year is more stressful on my body, and it may be deficient in certain aspects, obviously after testing, be it IM8 or being whatever I'm using at the time. I use it with my the panel, my blood panel, understanding what my body needs, and I supplement that. And then when I test again, I stop. So being on something all the time, including omega-3s, including magnesium even, there are times where I feel I don't need it.
Yes.
Why would I take it, So, and I think that's really important. It's shocking for people that for that to take place. But someone like myself and yourself, we also work on other things. If you wear a whoop or a ring or an aura or whatever, it doesn't mean that you've done everything that you can for your health, If you go to the gym 3 times a week, it doesn't mean that you're doing everything for your health, right? If I sleep 8 hours a night, it doesn't mean that you're sleeping well, So when you prioritize it, all of these things you pay attention more to, and you're able to do them a little bit better. So thank you for today. This has been awesome. Such a wonderful conversation. And I knew I'm going to be enjoying this, but I didn't know this much. So thank you so much for your time. Keep doing the amazing things that you're doing. And I can't wait for us to catch up again and do this one more time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elie. It's lovely been learning from you as well. And I think it's so important how much you've stressed about stress and what can we do. I think it's a valuable question for me to even think about what more can we do?
Yeah.
And how can we think outside of the box?
It seems to be the root of everything, you know? So no matter what we say, hair loss, stress, sleep, stress, my stomach, stress. We always kind of come back to stress. And it seems this vague monster that no one really knows, like, what do I do with that, you know?
Yeah.
Breathe. I don't know, ashwagandha or this. Let's not go down that. But I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's always these, like, common things. So thank you. And keep doing what you're doing, and I'll see you again soon, hopefully.
Thank you so much for having me.
Here you go, guys. So another episode. Thank you so much for Dr. Rhea for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.